Today, we're taking the deep dive into the future of a literal paradise, Vanuatu South. It's a place of incredible beauty, but it's also right on the front lines of a rapidly changing climate. We're going to look at the hard data and see what it tells us.
I mean, just take a second and look at this. That water, those cliffs, it's absolutely stunning. For the people who live here, life is woven into the fabric of the land and the sea. It's a rhythm that's been steady for generations. But the very thing that rhythm depends on, the climate, is starting to change.
So, that's the big question, right? What does all this actually mean for a place like this? We're going to break down the latest report from Vanuatu's Climate Futures portal to get some real answers.
Okay, so before we can understand where things are going, we've got to know what normal looks like. And for Vanuatu, the climate story has always been a pretty simple one, really. It's a tale of two seasons. For as long as anyone can remember, life here has moved to this predictable beat. You've got your warmer, wet season from November to April, and then things cool down and dry out from May to October. Simple, reliable. Now, the main thing that mixes it up year to year is something called the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO. You can think of it as the conductor of the weather orchestra. In an El Niño year, things get drier, fewer cyclones. In a La Niña year, it's the total opposite. Wetter and a higher chance of storms. That's the natural swing of the pendulum. But here's the thing, that natural rhythm, it's being thrown off. The data is telling us that the climate isn't just swinging back and forth anymore. It's changing in a fundamental way, and the warning signs are already flashing.
Let's start with the most basic thing, temperature. The region has already warmed by about 0.7 degrees Celsius. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But for a finely tuned ecosystem, it's like the planet running a constant low-grade fever. And that fever has real symptoms. We're seeing more hot days and fewer cold days. The ocean is having heat waves more often. The actual sea level has risen. And then there's the cyclones. We're seeing fewer of them overall, but the ones that do show up are packing a much bigger punch. It's a weird paradox, and we're going to circle back to it.
So that's what's already happened. That's the reality on the ground right now. But what about the future? What are the climate models telling us is just around the corner?
Well, science basically lays out two main paths from here. Think of it like a fork in the road. There's a low emissions future. That's the path where we seriously cut back on greenhouse gases globally. And then there's the high emissions or business as usual path. Every projection we're about to look at depends on which of these two roads we all go down.
So let's just stick with that high emissions scenario for a second. By 2050, we're looking at a warming of 1.2 degrees. By 2090, that jumps to a pretty shocking 2.7 degrees. But look at that last column. By mid-century, the intensity of extreme rainfall events is projected to skyrocket by 41%. That means when it rains, it won't just pour, it'll be a deluge. And a picture like this is what that 41% looks like in the real world. It's not a statistic on a chart. It's a flooded village, washed out roads, and crops completely destroyed. But the changes aren't just happening in the air. For an island nation, some of the biggest threats are brewing in the water itself. This is a story about heat and the incredible power that heat can unleash. Okay, you need to see this chart. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. It shows the number of marine heat wave days per year. On that high emissions path, by 2090, the ocean here could be in a state of heat wave for nearly the entire year. We're talking 320 to 360 days. That's a death sentence for coral reefs and the whole marine food web. And all that heat in the ocean? Well, it's fuel. And Vanuatu has always been in a global hotspot for tropical cyclones. Storms are just a part of life here.
So you'd think, warmer oceans, more fuel, more storms, right? It makes perfect sense. But this is where climate science gets really interesting. The projections actually show that the average number of cyclones might go down.
So, is that good news?
Not exactly. It's shaping up to be a future of quality over quantity when it comes to storms. There might be fewer of them, but the ones that do spin up are going to be beasts.
And this chart shows you why. The average wind speed for a severe cyclone is projected to tick up from about 45 to 47 meters per second. Now, that might not sound like a huge difference, but the destructive force of wind goes up exponentially with speed. So a small increase in speed means a huge increase in power. And this is what that extra power looks like on the ground. It's the difference between a storm that damages your roof and a storm that takes your entire home. The impact on people's lives and livelihoods just gets magnified.
Now, imagine these more powerful storms hitting a coastline that is already changing, because there's one more slow, steady, and absolutely relentless force at work: the rising ocean.
By the end of the century, just look at the difference between those two paths. In the low emissions world, sea levels rise about 42 centimeters. But in the high emissions world, it's 73 centimeters. For a low-lying coastal community, that extra foot of water is the difference between surviving and not. It changes everything.
So when you piece it all together, the intense heat, the extreme rain, the more powerful cyclones, the rising seas, you realize the data is painting a picture of two completely, profoundly different futures for the people of Vanuatu South.
One path leads to escalating, compounding risks. The other is still full of challenges for sure, but they're far more manageable. The science doesn't tell us which future is going to happen. It just lays out the options and leaves us with one single powerful question. Which one will it be?